Get the meeting rolling. Sorry again, we're a few minutes late. I hope you enjoyed this absolutely gorgeous spring day here in beautiful St. John, New Brunswick. So we'll call the meeting to order and ask you for the first item, Common Clerk, please.
Yes, item 2.1 on the agenda would be for council minutes of March the 8th.
Okay, thank you. Moved by the deputy and seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Thank you for that. On the question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? No, the motion is carried. Thank you. Next item.
Item 3 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, and there would be one addition from Committee of the Whole, and that would be item 17.1 for a city market lease at Kim's Korea.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor is moving that. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. Okay, thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Not seeing any. The motion's carried. Next item.
Next item is disclosures of conflict of interest.
Okay, not hearing or seeing any. Thank you. No conflicts tonight. Next item.
Item 5 is the consent agenda.
Deputy Mayor, you normally lead us. Yeah, you're muted, Deputy. Go ahead.
I'll move the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, 5.1 to 5.8. Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hickey. Thank you. And Councillor Reardon, questions?
I just have a couple of quick comments. 5.3 Economic and Community Recovery Program on-street parking subsidy pilot. That has been a great success, that program. There's some monies left, so we'll continue it on. But it's interesting reading. If anyone from the public is interested, you should take a look at that. It's really great. We've got a license agreement for the stage and washrooms at Pat Rockaway. And if Curtis is available, it just goes until June of 21. And just was wondering if he would explain that. And I'm good with everything else.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Langell.
Through you, Your Worship, there were a number of terms and conditions that had to be negotiated with this license agreement for the stage and the washroom facility. It took some time over the number of months that we were negotiating to get that done. COVID, we can blame everything on COVID, so that also took its toll a little bit. The reason we're proposing it to go to the end of June of this year, as I mentioned in the council report, the patio agreement was up the end of 2020, and it had been originally intended to deal with both that agreement and this one for renewal at the same time. We'll marry them in together. But by the time you receive this license agreement for the stage and washroom, it had already expired. So we couldn't take that to council. So to resolve that issue, we've extended this agreement to the end of June of 2021. And as I mentioned in the report, we'll be forthcoming with a new agreement that will marry both the patios as well as the stage and washroom together.
Thanks, Curtis.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKenzie, did you have a question?
I did, Your Worship. Just actually a comment, I guess. 5.1, the refinancing debenture application. That is not new money. That's refinancing money that we owe, and we're going to get a lower rate to actually save money. Right? So just want to make sure that is
correct, Councillor.
Okay, and then 5.7, the fire service review. I didn't see in that report a timeline as to when it'd be done by.
Your Worship, I can address that. The timeline is still in a degree of flux because the proponent is going to have to do a fair amount of data analysis, and we have to provide that data. And therefore, we're still in discussions as to exactly how that data will flow, when we will be able to provide everything that they are looking for, etc. That's why you don't see a firm timeline, other than we know that the fire services review will be complete before the end of 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, yeah, I have a comment as well. I think the consent agenda always shows how much work is getting done by our staff from meeting to meeting. Of course, many of these starting and happening over many, many months. The fire service review as well, I think is a very, very important document for us. We, of course, are doing a strategic plan. We're now going to have a 15-year fire services strategy. We, through a call with Mr. David Campbell last week, I've learned our region has to grow by 2,000 people a year for the next 20 years straight. So I think all of these things tie together is my point, and I'm certainly pleased to see the topics of sustainability, affordability, all of those pieces being referenced in that fire service review. Our cost per capita today is very high. Who are we going to benchmark ourselves? How can we innovate? What expertise can we bring to this file? Everyone working together. So I won't be here, but I'll be watching with great interest to see the outcome. And at the end of the day, it's how we invest our money to help this community grow and thrive. And obviously, we need to keep it safe as well. So pleased to see that project moving ahead. Thank you. Okay, on the consent agenda then, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anyone? Thank you. And anyone contrary-minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next item.
Yes, the next item is item 6 on the agenda, and it's members' comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sullivan, kick us off. Yep.
Thanks, Your Worship. Something quite exciting. There's been lots of discussion online in the last little while just about transportation, how people are getting around St. John. And for the public, we have just started today on our website, www.stjohn.ca, the virtual open house and public engagement for Move SJ Phase 3. So everybody who's out there and passionate about transportation, you have an opportunity to go to our website, log on to our Phase 3 virtual open house, and give your input before Move SJ is complete and comes to council. So I thought the timing of that was fantastic. An opportunity to expand beyond your 128 Twitter characters and share your ideas. So please do go look into that, and we would love to have your input. Further, I know there are lots of vaccinations rolling out. I found out last week that because I'm a high school teacher, I'm getting vaccinated this week. Yahoo! But unfortunately, today we also had an announcement of 8 new cases in the province and 1 in the St. John region. So as much as people are getting vaccinated and the summer is coming and we can see the end in sight, we still have to wear our masks. We're still virtual this week. Wash your hands, socially distance. As much as you want to get together with 50 of your favorite friends, please don't. Please stay within your 15 and stay safe. It's not long now. We're getting there, but we have to stay vigilant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to take a moment, Your Worship, and congratulate Moltex Energy and Rory O'Sullivan on the federal funding announcement that they got last week. Along with that 50.5 million is 48 new jobs for our region. So good work and congratulations. I also wanted to point out something that we did on the Growth Committee, Your Worship. We have 2 new initiatives that are really going to help with our demolitions on dilapidated buildings. One is a developer notification list. This is an email that will go out to developers who sign up, letting them know that there's a vacant building or redevelopment opportunities whenever they arise. So it's a notification to developers, giving them a heads up. And the other one is a procedure for late stage development proposals. And this is a procedure that staff will enact when development proposals are made on a building that has been approved by Common Council for demolition to try to save the building. So those 2 new initiatives, I think, are going to go a long way in helping us to continue to bring down dilapidated buildings and fix up ones that are in a position to be fixed up. So I just wanted to let the public know that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just wanted to mention that March 21st is the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Certainly wanted to mention that, and then also highlight the pretty incredible organizations that we have here in St. John. To name a couple, Prude, led by Ralph Thomas, Lee Sung, and their team, do incredible work on these issues, and as well as our Newcomers Association here in St. John, led by Mohammed Bega, do incredible work in the city. There's numerous other organizations that work on these issues as well. So I wanted to thank them, highlight them, and mention that the 21st is indeed the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. I also just wanted to echo Councillor McKenzie's comment about the investment in SMRs. I think it's a tremendous step. We saw the funding with ARC previous. Now we're seeing more funding with Moltex coming in. And just to put a personal spin on it, the impact of these diversifications in our energy industry, in particular in St. John, is having a big impact. I a friend in particular graduating in June from NBCC with a degree that's beyond my scope of knowledge, but far smarter than I am, and was worried about having to leave St. John in search of work because of tends to be only specific industries that are hiring and without jobs available. Now with these renewed investments, she's looking for the option to stay, which I think is really refreshing. Those are the kind of diversifications we want in our growth and in our economy as a whole. So I think it's tremendous, and thanks very much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Recreation, it's got to be a priority in our community, and I know it is for many. And with that, there's probably no greater time than to nominate a recreation champion. Call for nominations for the Greater St. John Sports Hall of Fame is fast approaching, and the deadline for that is April the 30th. And just a quick blurb, the St. John Sports Hall of Fame Committee is accepting nominations for the 2021 induction. And located in TD Station, the Hall of Fame represents decades of athletes, teams, and builders who have left their mark on sport legacy in Greater St. John. And nomination categories recognize athletes, teams, officials, and sport builders that include coaches, administrators, and other leaders involved in the development of an athlete, team, or sport. And for more information, you can visit the city's new and improved website, and all the information's there. So nominate a recreation champion in Greater St. John. There's probably one living right next door, and you don't even know it. So do that, and let's get lots of nominations in. Thank you, Your Worship.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor. Did I miss anyone? Okay, just a couple of quick ones for me. Thanks very much for the Move SJ open houses, Councillor. I had that as well. I had COVID as well, but we're running around. Spring is in the air. Everything's great, and 8 new cases today. So I knew you'd likely mention that as well. Last week I had the opportunity to participate in the new Conversation 2.0 with the New Brunswick Multicultural Council. Really exceptional conversation about immigration, the need for immigration, and that I think most New Brunswickers now recognize we need to have immigration to meet the demand for those that are retiring. We're a little bit older in New Brunswick. There's a lot of people that are going to be retiring over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And my council colleagues are probably sick of listening to me spew this number, but what Mr. David Campbell, the former chief economist of New Brunswick, said for St. John CMA, so the region of St. John, we need 2,000 people a year, every year for the next 20 years straight. Everything we do here should work backwards from that. How do we position ourselves to attract that many people here? That's to maintain our economy. So yes, growth is important. It's incredibly important, and we need to continue to set the stage. And I think we've got so much to offer here, so I'm quite excited about that. Also, there was a student event that we had on Thursday night, organized by Jennifer Walshoots and others. We had UMB St. John, and NBCC students talking about how we can improve the welcome for students. Of course, normally we could get together and have a number of great events. We couldn't do that, and it was quite interesting. I think Councillor McKenzie, you were participating. There were people participating in the live session from all over the world, asking questions. So the world can be very small. So congratulations to Jennifer and everyone else on that. Last council, we announced 27 community grants, incredibly important tonight. Hopefully council will approve the community arts grants, incredibly important. We've awarded tenders for Fundy Key, the SMR cluster, as Councillor Hickey and others have spoken about. Just the growth and momentum, an affordable housing strategy that we're working on. And lastly, just wanted to recognize, we talked about diversity and attracting a diverse range of candidates. I lost count. I think there's well over 35 so far. But in particular, I'd like to just highlight C. Jane Run, which is a local grassroots group trying to help women in particular secure seats so that we can get first stage of some gender balance, but also other diversity and balance around our council table. So I've been impressed seeing some of the work that they're doing in the support of some gender balance around our tables here. So those are my quick comments. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, Common Clerk.
Yes, next item is a presentation, Your Worship. It's item 8.1 on the agenda. And I'd like to welcome the Executive Director for the Ability New Brunswick, Haley Flero, and she will be sharing her screen to go over the presentation with Council.
Great. Well, welcome, Haley. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Darling, Deputy Mayor McAlery, and councillors. Thank you so much for having me this evening. A special thank you to Councillor Norton for the invitation. We've had some really engaging conversations about inclusive communities, diversity, and the social and economic impacts. So that's why I'm here this evening. I'm just going to share my screen. You should have received the presentation in your packet this evening. I'm going to start my timer too. So what I'm here to talk to you about is Ability New Brunswick, about the organization that I represent and our vision for an accessible New Brunswick. So this year, Ability New Brunswick's celebrating 65 years in New Brunswick. Mayor, we may be looking for a little anniversary message, so just keep that in your pocket. Our mission is to empower the independence and full community participation of persons throughout New Brunswick who have a mobility disability, and we do this in 4 ways. One of them is being the primary voice for New Brunswickers of all ages living with a mobility disability, being a leader in service delivery, and being an influential voice in federal, provincial, and local public policy development and community development for people with a mobility disability. We do it through knowledge, expertise, and lived experience. And we're also key partners in the rehabilitation, disability, and research fields. We're governed by a provincial board of directors, and I can tell you that the service delivery we provide, we don't have an office in St. John, but we don't have offices in a lot of regions, because every time we secure some funds, we invest in people. So I can guarantee you I have 2 staff that serve Sussex to St. Stephen, including St. John, and they're around kitchen tables, and that's where we want them to be. So who do we work with? We work with children to seniors. Our youngest client right now is actually in the St. John region, a little 2-year-old boy living with cerebral palsy, and we're working with him and his family to look at accessible daycares, look at funding for equipment. And our most senior is also a St. John resident who's 108, and she borrows from our Adapted Equipment Loan Service, our adult tricycle, to go whipping around with her 75-year-old child. So she is active, and only I can hope that I'm active as she is at 108. So who we serve, what is a mobility disability, spinal cord injury, muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, MS, amputation, ALS, stroke, arthritis, and many others. I think there's 200 different disability types in our system. I would love to tell you more about Ability MB's programs and services, but I really wanted to talk about some of the data, trends, and demographics this evening. So please visit our website, abilitymb.ca. If you have constituents with a mobility condition that might benefit from some help with planning or education or finding housing, applying to funding programs, we really want to be there for you and your constituents. But tonight I want to talk to you about some of the trends, data, and opportunities for St. John. So New Brunswick has the second highest rate of disability in Canada at 26.7% of the population. I say this to every politician, that's a lot of votes. So it's really important to have that disability lens when you're looking at community plans. So why is that high rate? Yes, we do have, the oldest population in Canada, and with age does come disability, but there's a lot of other trends. We have high rates of autism in New Brunswick. We have the highest MS rates in Canada and a high rate of other neurological conditions. So it's not just one factor or one population. Mobility is the most prevalent disability type in New Brunswick at 45.2% of all people with a disability, next only to pain and flexibility types, which is a population we serve as well. So 73,000 New Brunswickers over the age of 15 have a mobility disability, and 40% of New Brunswickers over 65 have a disability. So what are the roadblocks? I've been in the nonprofit sector for 24 years now, and I would love to turn the lights off and not be needed, because I'm sure this talented team will find jobs other places. But we still have so many roadblocks in our communities that necessitate the need for an organization like ours. So there's been advances in human rights, inclusion, community accessibility, medical care, rehabilitation. But it doesn't mean people with a mobility disability are experiencing a good quality of life. We're still dealing with issues of poverty. Single parents and people with a disability are the two populations hardest hit by poverty in this province. Lack of access to physical activities, poor employment prospects, difficulty accessing post-secondary education, lack of accessible transportation and accessible communities really compound the problems. And let me tell you, the pandemic was not a big help on a lot of these isolating factors. But we've got through it, and we helped a lot of your constituents. Now, I don't want to be a negative Nelly, so there's tons of opportunity. I've got my eye on the pulse of St. John and uptown growth, revitalization of the waterfront, rebuilding success in the cruise ship industry, Discover St. John, St. Awesome. Myself and 3 couples, we go and have a couples weekend in St. John once a year. We fell into the St. Awesome group, and it's just such a wonderful community. I work there 3 days a month, and I can't wait to be there. And all of these opportunities have real prime opportunities for improving accessibility as we go forward. There's also this untapped labor market pool. Mayor, you were talking about immigration potential. When we look at some of these numbers, there's 120,000 forecasted job openings in New Brunswick. And look, there's 22% difference in employment rates of people with and without a disability. And we know for our population, only 38% of people with a mobility disability are employed. So we have some potential there. Ability New Brunswick actually engaged an economist. It wasn't David Campbell, but it was another New Brunswick economist to take a look at, I have to say it was Premier Higgs that challenged our organization to take a look at this. We all know the social benefits of employment, but take a look at some of this, the untapped labor market pool. If we could move 21,000 more people with a disability into the labor market, and these are individuals showing potential for employment, possibly just with some minor supports. Look at the annual labor market income potential, 1.38 billion. 1.97 billion in annual GDP, 220 million in potential provincial tax revenue. There's a lot of opportunity to look at more inclusive communities that will help us lead to employing more people with a disability. An accessible New Brunswick, I'm all about the social benefits, but I have worked in this sector long enough that it's so important to talk about the economic benefits. I talked about a lot of people with a disability living in poverty, and yet Royal Bank's been reporting that combined disposable annual income for people with a disability in Canada is approximately $25 billion. In North America alone, persons with a disability spend more than $13 billion a year on travel, and they're often accompanied by friends, families. when they travel, when they eat out. My mom lived with a neurological condition all my life, and I was fortunate my family was well resourced. But in our small town, we only went to the restaurants that we could all go as a family. We only went to the recreation activities where we could all go as a family. It really does influence families, and many provinces are looking at accessible tourism strategies right now, and many municipalities are, just to leverage some of these opportunities. We know universal design is cost effective. We see your numbers. You know what it costs to modify, upgrade, retrofit infrastructure. So there's a lot of research now that shows that if you incorporate good universal design into the initial planning and development, you're saving long-term infrastructure costs. I see it every day of businesses coming to us saying, we want to make some modifications to our building, and you see the price tags, $100,000 for an elevator, $200,000 for this. It's a significant financial impact. And good design does not mean ugly design. Look at some of the work like the new Irving bill, really nice designs that can be done with good planning and maintain the heritage feel. So what are some promising practices in St. John? I love St. John. These are just some of the photos. I have to give a thank you to one. Oops. Presentation, Colin. Oh, there we go. To one of our board members, Roger, who took these photos for me. King Square, a lovely accessible area, and when it has the market, so many people we work with are really enjoying this outdoor space, and it should be promoted as an accessible tourism destination. The Lily Lake Pavilion, Harbor Passage. This is one of those great paved trails that takes a lovely passage through parts of the city. Tucker Park viewing platform. We were involved in helping secure the funding for this. They've got some work to do to fix the grade up, but they tell me it's going to be done by spring. Wonderful opportunity for those that use mobility devices to be able to see this great part of the city. Rainbow Park, the accessible playground. I'm so tired of hearing stories of children that have to sit on the sidelines where other kids play. That shouldn't be happening in our communities. So this is another example of good universal design so everyone can access a part of the city. Key areas to promote to tourists. A lot of people with mobility disabilities go on cruises, and I'm not stereotyping, it's just one of the real accessible travel options. So being able to promote to tourists the accessible spaces, venues, pathways in the city is such an opportunity for business. Our adapted sport and recreation equipment loan service at Ability New Brunswick, I mentioned the lovely 108-year-old woman from St. John. We have we have about $750,000 in adapted sport and recreation equipment that we loan for free. Mayor Darling, you and I could go out and buy a pair of skates today for $150, but a sledge like this is $1,100. Really cost prohibitive to families. So we lend it to families to use in your recreation facilities. Tourists can book a hand cycle to use when they get off the cruise. This is a service that we make available to St. Johners and tourists to the region. Other measures, now this isn't perfect, it doesn't meet code, but here's a stopgap measure that was taken in the city of putting temporary portable ramps. Some people have to call ahead to make sure they're put out. It's not perfect, but it's a way to build a more inclusive city, because if you're eliminating 12% of your business by not being accessible, that's a chunk of business that you want to have access to. Now this slide's overwhelming, but it's overwhelming for a reason, because there's a lot of things that our communities need to do better. And when I talk to our service participants in your region to create this list, these are the things they say that get in the way of them participating, engaging in the community, shopping in the community, going out in the community. It's curb cuts and ramps that are too steep or not properly maintained or have abrupt changes in slope, lack of curb cuts, unlevel areas at the top and bottom of ramps, lack of accessible parking spaces. It's really hard to find a space in St. John parking space that actually meets the New Brunswick barrier-free regulation. Lack of textural changes in color contrast, lack of snow clearance near hospitals and clinics, intersections, bus stops, insufficient drop-off and pickup areas, lack of audible traffic signals, Gravel versus crusher dust. Please don't use gravel in our community parks anymore. Crusher dust packs so well and is a more accessible option. It's cheaper than gravel. We'd love more to be paved, but when we can't do it, crusher dust is great. Inadequate lighting, heavy doors that are difficult to open, automatic door openers that don't work, sandwich boards or patios on narrow walkway, shrubbery hanging over sidewalks, playgrounds that don't have accessible features, lack of standards for recreation facilities. The current standards don't work. For example, we know that a sport facility needs to have 42-inch doors to ensure multi-sport wheelchairs can fit through the door, and doorknobs that are difficult to turn versus lever handles. I just want to show you a quick slide, and this is not the main part of my presentation, but there's so many things happening that municipalities can capitalize on. And one of them is the discussion that's emerging around visitability, which is three components to, and we've seen Bolingbrook in the USA, a town in the USA, a municipality in the USA, and in Manitoba, community of Manitoba have adopted ordinances, bylaws to ensure newly constructed single family homes have at least these features. And it's really about sustainable communities so people can age in place. Who doesn't love to move a couch into a single level house? Having a bathroom on the main floor. It's just something for the future, but there's so much split level entry stock on the market in our communities in New Brunswick that we're hoping this will really be the future, that we can design homes where people can age in place. My dad was an engineer and he built his home this way, and I always wondered why, and now that he has a mobility condition, I get it. So towards an accessible St. John, to wrap up, what are the next steps? Ability MB, wants to continue to partner with the St. John Ability Advisory Committee on projects, parking. You could start with accessible parking. Let's review it and prioritize more accessible spaces. Where could we add more parking to get people back to the downtown that have a mobility condition? Could it be a bylaw that all playgrounds must have accessible features? A bylaw to incentivize visitable housing? Should we be promoting accessible destinations more to tourists coming off the cruise ship? Talk about the pathways, the areas, the places. There's lots of opportunity, and I just want to thank you for having me today. I've put some resources in your presentation. The New Brunswick Barrier-Free Design Building Code regulation that we were involved in designing, the Canadian Standards Association Design for the Built Environment, and Ability MB has developed a bunch of publications to help municipalities with inclusive activities, facilities, accessible playgrounds. Our clients even developed an accessible geocaching checklist that is really helpful to some municipalities. So join our team. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Contact me anytime. I'd be of help. But there's so much opportunity that makes economic sense and social sense in the city to really ensure that there's this accessibility lens.
Okay, thank you very much. Your alarm scared me. I was wondering where it was coming from, but
I'm so sorry.
You were right on time. It was fantastic. Really great presentation. Thank you so much. The data you mentioned, I think, around Premier Higgs challenging you on your I'll call it scorecard. Really exceptional document that illustrates the opportunity that is before us. Right. And as we're planning through a strategic plan for the city, that has to be about inclusivity. It has to be about equity and equality. And it has to, when we're having a conversation about talent, I think you've really, reminded us that there's a lot of untapped talent right here before us. And all of the other very say ground level is the wrong word, but that long list that you had for us, Haley, of all the opportunities that we have as a city. So thank you for your presentation was excellent tonight. Thanks. Questions, comments, committee for Deputy Mayor, kick us off. And I see a few hands. Yep.
Worship, I do want to say thank you, Haley. Wonderful presentation. And over the years, the city has really tried to make all of our facilities accessible. And I know that we've made many changes, and I'm sure there's many other improvements that we could make. How do you compare us to other cities? Do you think that over the years that we've, through our own organization, Ability St. John, and our own staff and our resources, we've improved St. John, I think, a lot to make facilities and especially our public spaces open to accessibility. Do you feel the same, that we've come a long ways? Probably you feel we should do a bit more.
I certainly think there's been progress. You know, I hear constant feedback about the accessibility of Lily Lake Pavilion and that being able to be a central hub for weddings, for community groups. You know, the parks, the Tucker Park viewing platform, some things like that just make significant difference. Imagine the freedom of being able to wheel up to look over the beautiful waterfront. You know, sometimes it's as simple as that. Who doesn't love fresh air? And I think, and I've met with Discover St. John before, it's always been positive. I think sometimes we just need to do a better job at promoting the spaces that we have and focusing on others. One of my pick points, and I know Councillor Norton's going to say something about this too, is parking. You know, if you can't get into downtown with your family and find a space to go, uptown, you're not going to, that was a Fredericton slip, that you're not going to go with your family, and you're not going to spend your money in that area, and you're not going to frequent the wonderful places we have. So there is some areas, and this is, you know, picking them, identifying them, and making impact, and making change as we go. But there's lots to celebrate, and I'd love us to promote to cruises. Here's the 6 spaces that have accessible pathways, that you really need to see in St. John. Now we have to make sure they have accessible transportation from the terminals, and that's another thing. But we really have to promote what we have.
Well, thank you again, and thank you for the presentation. And we'll continue to work towards more accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Reardon, please.
Thank you, Worship. Haley, thank you for your presentation. As you know from visiting St. John, occasionally we are old, which creates some problems for us because a lot of our buildings are built right at the sidewalk. So as much as those little ramps, those stopgap ramps don't meet code, for us to meet code, we'd almost have to start across the street a lot of times. And the other complication with St. John, as you know, is our hilly geography, our topography, which also makes it very difficult. So one of the questions, so we just added a couple of disability parking spaces in the uptown, and I'm just curious about that. One question I wrote down is, do we have any stats that indicate what we have is not sufficient? So do you work with the St. John Ability Advisory Committee at all? Like, do they have stats? Do you have stats? And you talked about, when you presented that, about those parking spaces meeting the parameters that would be required. So it'd be, because these two are brand, at least the two I can think of are brand new. We just put them in. So I would be curious as to whether they would meet what you are promoting.
That's a really good question, and I'm trying to identify the spots you're thinking of.
There's a new one on Germain Street, and there's a new one on Prince William Street, are the two that I'm thinking of right now. And we've put in a couple of loading zones as well around the same time, which are difficult too because you end up with trucks there, you know, in the same areas.
Great. I'm visualizing the area. One of the things, a service that's available from our organization free of charge, is if parking would like us to go and do an analysis of certain streets and to see where they are. We're not here to police or be negative. We want to look at, you know, these are the changes that are needed for, maybe they don't have curb cuts close by. Maybe they meet the width and length, but they don't have appropriate signage, or there isn't a curb cut. So we'd be happy if parking would like us to take a look at some of the spots, including those. A review tool comparing to the regulation to see what improvements. I'd be happy to do that and report back.
Okay, and then how would we get those, I guess, that data to say whether we don't have enough, we do have enough, whatever, you know? What are we, where are we looking to find that? What are we like? The
New Brunswick barrier-free regulation. Sorry if I'm cutting you. Just a cutting to cut you off. The passion gets in the way. Sometimes. The New Brunswick barrier-free regulation building code, where it's really about buildings. It also is about communities, and there we help them develop a chart for the number of spaces that should be available within a parking area. So we would be able to take a look at that and recommend if there was, we're short on spaces in a certain area, if more spaces would be beneficial. I think that's a review that would be a really good start for the city to engage in. And we've done that for the city of Moncton. I'm there again in 2 weeks to actually help them. They're converting 6 spaces, general spaces, into accessible spaces because they've identified a gap. Sorry, city of Moncton, if I'm talking out of school here, but this is a service we're happy to do. Similar in Fredericton, if you're familiar with Fredericton, the outdoor market, we went and scoped out where was the accessible parking going to be. We even provided input into the brick because we wanted to ensure it was a brick that would be accessible but still meet within heritage standards. So these are things that we're happy to review, and New Brunswick has a regulation that we'd be able to measure against.
Now, what about the St. John Ability Advisory Committee? Do you interface with them very much as well? I mean, they would cover more disabilities. You are generally mobility. They would cover everything else in that spectrum.
We just recently presented, before presenting to council, we gave them a similar presentation. Certainly aware, and Greg, who's your city liaison, has been updating me on the different projects they've been involved in. So we talked about more and more partnerships that we can engage in, but they're a great resource for the city because I agree our tool is based on all disability types, but you have quite a diverse group there that's ready to provide input, and I'd be certainly happy to involve them in our review of any parking spots.
Thank you very much for your help.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Hickey, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much, Haley, for your presentation. Certainly your passion is obvious and I think is contagious around the table. I wanted to thank you for the presentation, but also, when I look at our opportunity, we're in the business of building communities and building neighborhoods, and the more we can work within our infrastructure to do better and to meet the best criteria is positive. And I think for me, that means, as we look at, huge investments in our road infrastructure in the coming months, are we making sure that their curb cuts are enough? Are we making sure that the curb extensions are enough? Are we making sure that, I just noticed that the city is taking measures for more audible crosswalks and making sure that those levels of accessibility continue. So I think the more we can really change our frame of reference on what our infrastructure is meant to service and what our infrastructure is meant to do, the better we're servicing the 26% of our population that lives with a disability. And I think that's a pretty significant number. So thank you. No questions.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention our organization's been involved with municipalities in identifying infrastructure projects, because you're right, it's not just about buses and it's not just about roads, it's about curb cuts. Many of the rural communities are so jealous because they'd love to be able to access the infrastructure funding, but they don't have the matching funds because they need curb cuts too. So I think we really need to make sure that we're looking at infrastructure dollars and including pathways, curb cuts, all of those things. And your citizens in the St. John Ability Advisory Committee will tell you where to prioritize what areas.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norton.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Council, for the engagement this evening, and specifically thanks to Haley and Ability MB. She's got quite a team around her, and I know although the office is in Fredericton, she's very, very well. She's familiarized herself well with not only St. John but Moncton and our municipality. So if there's a friend of municipalities, it's Ability MB, and that's good for everybody as we create more inclusive communities. So somebody else, David Stonehouse, has helped. He's been a champion for accessibility in our community for a long time. He's not only a leader, but he's an active citizen. For those of you that know David Stonehouse, he's certainly a champion for the cause. So, David, if you're tuned in tonight, thank you for your work and your effort. And the St. John Ability Advisory Committee, Haley's already spoke to them, and I know Councillor Reardon, you've mentioned them a couple of times, and you're a big champion in terms of making sure that their voice is heard. I want to provide some assurance that local voice was enthusiastic of Haley's presentation. Their input is threaded throughout this, and there's many of those those members that are listening this evening, and they were fully behind this. Some of the things that we can do, promising practices that we can take from glean from this presentation this evening and put in place, go to help not only those with mobility disabilities, but many of the members of the St. John Ability Advisory Committee. So I think it's a win-win-win. I don't want this presentation at the end of the night to just be a receive and file. I think there's opportunity. This council is still sitting and still active. Opportunity to take some of the practices that are here, specifically around, we've heard what Moncton is currently doing. We know that there's other municipalities that are looking at creating greater bandwidth in terms of their accessibility. And the deputy mayor said, yeah, we're going to continue on, but we need to put action behind those words. And this evening at some point, I would move that we refer this to the city manager, this presentation, for a report back to council on how we can implement one of those promising practices that Haley's already flushed out in terms of looking at the landscape of St. John, specifically around accessible parking. Is there 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 spots that we can look at that can be made that are currently general purpose that can be in terms of accessible parking spots? Is that something we can do? Is there some other low-hanging fruit that through the city manager's office we can filter out to create? Is there something that we can embed into our policy and into our practice that we currently can't do? But I think that takes this presentation and it certainly puts some action behind some of the words that we're all speaking, the desire to make it, but creating that landscape is something we certainly want to do. So thank you, Haley, for your time this evening, and your worship. After council's had some time to ask questions, I'd certainly move a motion that we refer this to the city manager's office for a report back on something that can be done concrete, specifically around creating some accessibility, some accessible parking in our uptown area. Thank you.
Okay, hold that. Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Wrap us up, please.
Thank you, Worship. Haley, every day I learn more and more about accessibility issues in St. John. One of the things that I'm interested in is affordable housing. And I'm wondering, I know there's a long list of people waiting for affordable housing, and it must be doubly hard when you have to have a place where it's accessible. So I'm wondering, is that how big an issue is that in St. John compared to other areas, and is the waiting list quite long?
That's a really great question. So one of the things we do is as the other programs and services I briefly mentioned is we help people find affordable, accessible housing. It's definitely an issue throughout the province. There's been some initiatives that have been really important, such as federal funding for portable rent supplements. This is where it's not necessarily a landlord in a building that has subsidized units. It's where the subsidy goes with the individual, and we can go out with them and find a unit that meets their needs. And landlords in the city have been terrific to work with. We've had some build ramps, widen doors, because they know the tenants we're trying to find housing for will be long-term tenants. So we really push provincially and federally for more of those portable rent supplements so we can make use of existing housing stock. But you're right, we need developers. We need, to meet this criteria of 20% of all units being universal design. So for seniors and people with a disability, because I'll tell you, there's very few emergency shelters or transition houses in the province that are accessible. So when our population winds up homeless, they're homeless. And it's a really difficult position to be in because there really isn't even emergency safe spaces. So it's still an issue. I still need you all as councillors to be really pushing for federally, provincially with developers because, with an aging population and high rates of disability, this is a key, housing is a really important issue in the community.
Well, thank you very much for coming in, and I would second that motion that Councillor Norton's putting forward. I think we need to know where we stand. Thanks very much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Haley. I'm a huge fan of the portable the portable support as well. I just think it really allows the market to respond, and it allows the individual to go, where the unit is, and it allows the market to build units where the demand is. And anyway, that's for another day. But we've certainly been chatting with the MP about their new federal program as well. City Manager, you had a comment, and then we'll try to wrap up.
Your Worship, members of Council, this evening's presentation was obviously designed for awareness and to highlight not only the challenges but also some of the success stories we've had so far. Our intent, to Councillor Norton's point, is at the next council meeting will be part 2 of this presentation, where I will be asking the staff to present to you what we have done so far and what's in our, I'm going to use a term from the past, our hopper for the not too distant future in terms of what we are doing next. I would suggest with that piece of information that any additional motions related to what else we could do might be better served after we give you part 2, which will be in 2 weeks' time on April 6th at the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Okay, so with that information, Councillor Norton, I guess back to you. You would.
Yeah, just a quick question through you to the city manager. City manager, I certainly appreciate that. Certainly appreciate the timeline that council's working with here in terms of this at least the last few weeks that we have the opportunity to serve. Do we know, looking ahead to that 2-week presentation, if accessible parking, a small group or a subset of parking spaces is within that hopper?
Councillor, could I ask that we specifically address accessible parking in Uptown at the next presentation? And we will make a point to make sure that we give you a full description of what is available, what the plans call for, etc. moving forward. And I believe that a lot of the questions will be answered at that point in time.
I guess on that note, I'm happy to play ball. Councillor McKenzie's certainly offered to second the motion, and I'd ask him to certainly consider that going into 2 weeks. That if in the absence of that being there, that council take a position and a stand that we have a practice, or we have a policy, or we provide those spaces to a large number of our community that certainly have mobility disabilities. I think we do ourselves a great service. I think we not only energize a group of individuals that find it difficult to access some of the businesses and amenities that we have uptown, but I think to Councillor Reardon's point, we're the oldest city, and as a result, we have a responsibility to lead because we know better. And when we know better, we do better. And this evening, after this presentation, we know better. So let's certainly, in 2 weeks' time, happy to give courtesy to staff in the city manager's office to hear that presentation. But in the absence of any of the promising practices that were presented this evening, take a certainly an aggressive stance and put forward a motion to make sure that some of these practices are put into place. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I think that the desire is very clear. Not necessarily the motion tonight, but for tonight we'll just do a receive and file. 2 weeks we're going to do part 2, and then we'll pick up this conversation again. Councillor Norton, to your point. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Deputy. Sorry, do you have a comment, or are you making the receive and file motion?
I'll make the motion, but could I just make a comment to Haley that we just today, St. John Nonprofit started their new project on Wellington Row, and they do have accessibility units in that building. So that's going to be right in the Uptown. So great. In 18 months, it'll be ready to move in.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy. I heard a rumor you were driving the excavator up there today. That's good news. So thank you. Okay, receive and file made by the Deputy, seconded by Councillor Norton. Thank you. And on the question, all those in favor? Thank you. Anybody contrary minded? Thank you very much, Haley, for your presentation. And you can tune in 2 weeks for part 2. Okay, thank you very much, Council. Next item, please, Common Clerk.
Yes, next is item 10.1 on your agenda, and this is for a third reading consideration of zoning bylaw amendment with section 59 conditions for 3396 Loch Lomond Road, and Commissioner Hamilton will provide a brief overview.
Yes, Your Worship and members of council, before you this evening is a third reading of a rezoning application at 3396 Loch Lomond Road. The application involves a rezoning of a portion of the property from rural residential to rural general commercial and is intended to permit a long-standing household contractor business. I would add with this application, there are also section 59 conditions related to the development of the property. And on behalf of staff, Andrew Reid is available if there are specific questions related to the application. And with that introduction, I will turn it over to the clerk for the required council motions.
Okay, thank you. I'll take it over. Actually, we've got 7 items tonight, so we're going to have a quick staff reminder before each one of those really quickly. Tonight on this item, Council, I'll ask for the first of 4 motions by entirety is the first motion. Deputy Mayor move, seconded by Councillor Reardon. Thank you. And on that question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary? Yes.
Sorry, I meant to, I have a note here that Councillor Strobridge was not present for this particular item in the public hearing. So for 10.1, 10.4, and 10.5, just so that Councillor will not vote on third. Okay, thank you. Councillor, you just turn your camera off for a minute, please. So again, I think we were, just call the question again. The motion for entirety is on the table. Call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary-minded? Okay, not seeing or hearing anyone. Thank you. Common Clerk. This is a law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 8,227 square meters located at 3396 Loch Lomond Road, also identified as a portion of PID number 0033010126 from rural residential to rural general pursuant to a resolution adopted by council under section 59 of the Community Planning Act. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next motion, councils for section 59. Deputy Mayor moves, seconded by Councillor Merrithew. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Reardon, question?
I just have a quick question in here. It's in the kit on page 103. It says that at the third reading that the city will accept money in lieu of payment or whatever. What is it? Money in lieu of. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, what is the calculation to calculate that, to figure it out?
So we do, clerk. We do have a fourth motion. I guess we can ask that question anytime, Councillor. We have a fourth motion, which is land for public purpose. Okay, resolution. Well, I'll wait till that. Okay, thank you. If you don't, it might fit a bit better there. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, on section 59, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary-minded? Okay, not hearing or seeing anyone. The motion's carried. Okay, and by title. Thank you, Councillor Merrithew move, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Thank you. And on the question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary-minded? Okay, not hearing or seeing anyone. A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. Sorry, Common Clerk, you just cut out at the end. Could you just repeat that, please? Yeah, I just read out the title, Your Worship, a law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. Okay, perfect, thank you. And the last motion we need, Council, is land for public purchase resolution. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. And now perhaps your question, Councillor Reardon. You're muted, Councillor.
Sorry, just wondering how that gets calculated. Money in lieu of land for public purposes. Okay, I probably asked this before, and I don't know if it gets calculated by geography or what it is, or value of the property or what.
Yeah, Commissioner Hamilton, or?
Your Worship, it is calculated based on a percentage of the assessed market value of the land, and there is a calculation done on the basis of comparable properties adjacent to this property. I would refer to Mr. Andrew Reid just to comment on the specifics of the application, but that's generally the approach.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I was just curious as to what the equation was to arrive at a figure. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I will call the question then. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Okay, thank you. The motion is carried. Okay, Common Clerk, next item.
Yes, 10.2 on the agenda is third reading for supplemental report 215 Somerset Street rezoning application.
Okay, thank you. Just sorry, I think Mr. Landry, I'm not sure if you were here for that first item, but if you're staying, could I just ask you to turn your camera off if you can figure that out for me? That's all. Or we might elect you.
I've seen what I did. I appreciate your help on the council. Thank you. I'll turn off now.
If you left your camera on, you might get elected to the next council. That's all. I just wanted to warn you. That's all, sir. Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Hamilton, are you giving us a quick?
Yes, Your Worship. Before you this evening is for third reading is a rezoning application at 215 Somerset Street. It received first and second reading on November 9th, and the purpose of the rezoning application is to permit a specialty retail business with a focus on women recovering from breast cancer. And at the request of the applicant, third reading was delayed to allow for alternative sign concepts to be developed for the business. And for council's information, there is a supplemental report in your package with additional recommendations from staff to modify the previous section 59 conditions. And these do reflect the applicant's change in plans to use a projecting sign to advertise the business. All other aspects of the recommendations remain the same, and Mark O'Hearn is available on behalf of staff if there are questions of council. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. And Common Clerk, I think Councillor Strobridge was okay for this item? No.
Yes, so Councillor Strobridge was only absent for 10.1, 10.4 and 10.5.
Okay, no, perfect. Thank you. I see Councillor back there again. Okay, thank you. First motion we're looking for council is in entirety. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. And on the question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Okay, not hearing or seeing anyone. Thank you. Motion's carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 923 square meters located at 215 Somerset Street, also identified as PID number 000-25130, from 2-unit residential to general commercial pursuant to a resolution adopted by council under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act.
Okay, thank you. And Section 59 now, folks. Thanks, Deputy Mayor again, and Councillor Merrithew. Thank you. On the question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Anybody contrary minded? Not seeing or hearing anyone. Okay, and then lastly, by title, please. Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, excuse me, and Councillor Hickey. Thank you. And I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Thank you. The motion is carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, thank you. Next item. 10.3,
Your Worship, is a third reading again. It's for a zoning bylaw amendment regarding fees.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hamilton, Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes, Your Worship and members of council, before you this evening for third reading are zoning bylaw amendments to implement adjustments to planning application fees as were proposed in council sustainability plan to better align development fees with the cost of delivering these services. The zoning bylaw amendments did receive first and second reading on March 8th, and Amy Poffenroff is available this evening if there are questions of council. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. The first motion we need is a motion for summary. Thank you, Councillor Hickey and Councillor Reardon. Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Okay, thank you. Not hearing anyone. Motion's carried.
Your Worship, just for the record, this was advertised to allow the clerk to read this in summary rather than the whole bylaw.
Okay,
if we were to particular bylaw,
if we were to object, though, Common Clerk, could we have it read in its entirety?
You certainly could, and I would be happy to read it to the listening audience.
Read it later to yourself. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. 10.3. So this is a law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw amendment focuses on revised fees in an updated fee schedule and 2 new fees to build consistency with other development bylaws, amending paragraph 12.48, amending subparagraph 12.49A, and deleting and replacing subsection 2.11C, and deleting and replacing Schedule B.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And by title, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. And Councillor McKenzie, thanks again. And on the question, all those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Okay, motion's carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Strobridge, will ask you to just pop off again for this item. Next two, actually. Thank you. Common Clerk, next item.
Yes, so 10.4 again is a third reading. This one's for St. John Heritage Conservation Areas bylaw with respect to fees.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes, Your Worship and members of council, before you this evening for third reading are amendments to the Heritage Conservation bylaw, and these are intended to implement adjustments to the heritage application fees as proposed in Council Sustainability Plan, intended to better align the fees with the costs of delivering these services. These amendments did receive first and second reading on March 8th, and Ms. Amy Poffenroff is available this evening if there are questions of council.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Commissioner. First motion is for summary. Thank you, Councillor Reardon, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Thank you. And on the question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Thank you. Not seeing or hearing anyone. The motion's carried.
This is entitled A Law to Amend the St. John Heritage Conservation Areas bylaw. The St. John Heritage Conservation Areas bylaw is amended by deleting and replacing subsection 6.2C, adding subsection 6.11, and deleting and replacing Schedule K as it relates to the fee structure.
Perfect, thank you. And now by title. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Hickey, thank you. And seconded by, sorry, too many hands, Councillor Reardon, thank you. All right, and on the question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Thank you. The motion is carried.
A law to amend the St. John Heritage Conservation Areas bylaw.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next item.
Next item is 10.5, and this is another St. John Heritage Conservation Area bylaw amendment, and this one is for 22 Sydney Street.
Okay, thank you. Not sure if the commissioner is coming back again. Okay, there we go. We missed you, Commissioner. Welcome back.
Thanks, Your Worship. Before you this evening for third reading is a site-specific amendment to the Heritage Conservation Areas bylaw related to 22 Sydney Street. The amendment is intended to facilitate a contemporary infill project related to the Sydney Street Courthouse, as has been proposed by the St. John Theatre Company. The amendment received first and second reading on March 8th, and Ms. Emma Sampson is available this evening in case there are questions of council.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I need a motion for summary, please. Councillor Armstrong, thank you. And Councillor McKenzie, thank you for seconding that. And on the question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary-minded? Not seeing anyone. Thank you. The motion's carried.
A law to amend the St. John Heritage Conservation Areas bylaw. The proposed St. John Heritage Areas bylaw would allow for contemporary architecture designated as Tier 3 developments as site-specific bylaw amendments related to 22 Sydney Street, and would add Schedule P, Tier 3 developments and subsection 8.
Perfect. Thank you. And by title? Thank you. Councillor Reardon and Councillor Merrithew, thank you. And I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary-minded? Thank you. The motion is carried.
A law to amend the St. John Heritage Conservation Area bylaw.
Well, thank that just very quickly. That's a very exciting vote for tonight, and I can't help but think of folks like Bob Boyce and the entire board and the early, not the changes to the heritage bylaws to allow such a project, the excitement of such a project coming along with the historic courthouse, and now this state-of-the-art architecture. I just can't wait to see the project come together. That's a pretty exciting vote tonight, folks. Congratulations to everybody involved. Okay, next item, please. And Councillor Strobridge, you're welcome back now. Next item, Colin Clerk.
10.6 is another third reading, and this one is for a bylaw respecting the reduction of single-use plastic bags in the city of St. John.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hugenholtz.
Thank you and good evening. Before you this evening is the third reading of a bylaw for the reduction of single-use plastic bags in the city of St. John. It would have received first and second reading on March 8th and is before you here this evening for third reading.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And sorry, let me catch up here. By summary, first of all, thank you, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Hickey. Thank you for seconding that. On the question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary-minded? Thank you. Councillor Armstrong is against that motion. Okay, thank you. The motion's carried.
Okay, so the title is a bylaw respecting the reduction of single-use plastic bags in the city of St. John, and the summary is the bylaw respecting the reduction of single-use plastic bags in the city of St. John will significantly reduce recycled plastic bag waste by prohibiting businesses from providing plastic checkout bags to customers, while also allowing customers to utilize their own reusable bags for transporting purchased items. There are multiple exceptions in Section 5 of the bylaw whereby a business can provide plastic bags to a customer, such as for meat and food items. Violation of the bylaw is considered an offense and subject to a fine of not less than $300 and not more than $2,100 upon summary conviction.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And by title? Thank you, Councillor Hickey, and thank you, the Deputy Mayor again. Thank you. And I'll call the question. All those in favor? Sorry, all those in favor. Okay, thank you. And anyone contrary-minded? Okay.
I just have something to say, that's all.
I apologize, Councillor. Sorry, I'm not procedurally. I don't even know the answer. Did you have a comment to make? Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm not supporting the motion. I just want people to know that in China, they use 3 billion bags a day. 3 billion. It's over 1 trillion a year. In the country of Canada, we use 15 billion bags. So I think we should focus on those that use the most bags and not the little guys, because we have a plant here in St. John that supports local labor. That's my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Common Clerk, did you read the title? I'm not sure if I...
No, has the question been called, Your Worship?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was
okay.
All those in favor with the exception of Councillor Armstrong. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so the title is a bylaw respecting the reduction of single-use plastic bags in the city of St. John.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And next item?
So the final bylaw consideration is 10.7, and this is a weight restriction bylaw amendment on Wentworth Street. And I believe there'll be a request to table this.
The city manager has put his hand up, so we'll hear from you, city manager, please.
Your worship, members of council, I am requesting that a member of council table this motion. The reason for it is that the developer, since first and second reading, has actually changed the dates in which he wishes to move this crane onto his development site. We are working through those dates now, and we will return to council with an amendment for third reading prior to the developer's needs to move that crane, but we are not ready to do so this evening, and therefore I am requesting a tabling motion until the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hickey and Councillor Armstrong. Okay, thanks. Were those questions, anyone? Okay, lots of hands are flying, sorry. Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Okay, thank you. That's tabled. Thanks. Motion's carried. Okay, next item.
Next item is 11.1 on the agenda, and it's a submission from the mayor with respect to municipal candidate information sessions. Okay,
I guess if somebody would, move the motion, because I can't move my own motion. So Councillor Norton, thank you, and Councillor Hickey, thanks. I'll just read the motion. I think it's pretty straightforward. In fact, it's something we did previously. The municipal elections are coming up this May, which presents a unique opportunity for citizens of our city to serve in public office. The opportunity to serve is a tremendous commitment that all members of our community should be given the chance to fully understand. Furthermore, the current St. John City Council has passed several initiatives that have set a plan for growth for the foreseeable future. Prospective candidates should have easy access to key documents that would help inform their views. This would allow candidates to campaign with a better understanding of our city. Enhancing democracy is a worthy goal. Offering education sessions to prospective candidates, citizens, and other stakeholders is an important component of our democracy. Several challenges currently exist, including low voter turnout, challenges related to navigating the immense amount of information shared through council meetings, and gaps in who to call for support. The decision to run for office is not one that should be taken lightly. But it should be incumbent on the city to best present the facts so that we can encourage those willing to serve to do so. Those members of council not reoffering could be available to answer questions related to the demands of the role on the council if requested during the session. And the motion reads as following: that the city clerk hold a virtual information session or sessions that are open to any interested candidates for common council. These meetings must take place prior to the 9th of April, 2021, that Elections New Brunswick be invited to attend, and that the focus of the meetings be on explaining the process and procedures that highlight expectations, time commitments, workload, governance, and associated demands of being on council. That the sessions clearly identify where all relevant information on policies and background is located for public access. That the city's website continue to maintain an election page where the most significant information is presented for easy access, and that the sessions be recorded and posted to the city's website. So that is the motion, council, if there's any discussion. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Worship. It's a good motion. I'll be supporting it. I just wanted to make a comment, though. We have been doing this, and is it not Elections New Brunswick that leads it, and that we are partnering with them, not them partnering with us?
Yeah, Common Clerk, I know you did one prior to the last election being postponed. I'm not sure how it was positioned. Do you have a comment on that?
Your Worship, to be quite honest, I can't recall if Elections NB reached out to us or if it was vice versa, but we have worked with them several times and have a good partnership with Elections NB, and the city's always happy to present these sessions. That often candidates find them very useful.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excellent motion. I assume it's just in line. It looks like it's the exact same thing we did last year when we were anticipating elections. I would only ask, is the intention for it to be done virtually and then recorded and held on the website?
Yeah, I was anticipating. I mean, city manager can comment, but I don't think our rules will allow us to gather in the next couple of weeks.
No,
with
I wouldn't want it to be done
so
that way.
Virtually, yes, Councillor. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Good.
Okay, thank you. City manager, did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to say they will be virtual, yes.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, perfect. Thanks. Anyway, it is pretty straightforward. I think it's just one other tool in the tool belt. Certainly, I've had a lot of conversations with prospective candidates who are just trying to navigate. I really want to thank our IT and clerk team for the section on our website, which I have pointed to people to many times to read those foundational documents. So I think this is just one other tool in that toolbox, if you will, or tool belt. Can't say that word. Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Thank you. And anyone contrary-minded? Okay, thank you. The motion is carried. Thanks very much. Next item, Common Clerk.
Item 11.2 is a submission from the mayor with respect to livability and road construction.
Okay, perfect. Thanks again. If somebody would at least get it on the table, we could debate it. Councillor Hickey moved, and Councillor Merrithew, thank you. So again, I won't read it all. I think there's a lot of preamble here. All I'm simply trying to say, certainly following along, certainly in our discussions around our strategic plan, there's a lot of really interesting conversations happening in the city, about livability, about the perception that we've prioritized cars and trucks on our roads, but not anyone else. The need to grow, the discussion around quality of life. So I've been involved in a number of those discussions. As we know, we've had announcements of tremendous investment in the greater St. John or St. John area. I think in the last 2.5 or 3 weeks, it was about $100 million, 38.7 million of which was going to see us rebuild 19 streets and 79 city blocks, Mr. McGovern, if I've got that right from memory. We don't have that chance very often, as Councillor Reardon has reminded us. We think President Lincoln drank from some of the pipes in the ground in St. John, so they're that old. And I just simply highlighted a number of our current plans, Plan SJ, the Central Peninsula Plan, our guiding principles, neighborhood direction, the Waterloo Village, Move SJ, that highlight this balancing of people, pedestrians, cyclists, trucks, cars, and simply asking that as we move forward with rebuilding of this infrastructure, that we have a report back from our exceptional staff on how are our policies being followed. So I'll read the motion that before any tenders are approved for street reconstruction, council be presented details on how current and planned city policies have been followed, that the concept of complete streets be embedded in our construction plans, and that opportunities to enhance livability be presented. Furthermore, that appropriate consideration be given to pedestrians, active transportation, those with mobility challenges, and vehicles in the reconstruction of all streets, including our capital plan. So I was not for a moment suggesting that we weren't doing this. I just want us to go through all those policies. Tonight we heard through our presenter tonight, even street cuts and curbs and how much parking is associated with different groups. So simply to have council hear back from our staff on how these new streets are going to be rebuilt following our policy. So I'll stop there. Thanks very much. Comments, questions, Deputy Mayor, kick us off.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wondered, if we call for a contract on a certain street, then would staff have another report put together that would call for a different contractor or a developer to do those amenities? If we had to have benches on the street, we had to have trees for beautification or flower beds or something, call on another contractor or a developer. at the same time to do that street? Because we'd have to pay that additional money, I would think, to do that. I have no problem with that. I just want to know if that's the way we're going to do it. Like, because if you called one contractor, like, say it was, I'm just using an example, Galbraith Construction, they might not be able to do planting of trees and stuff like that. So how would the city do that?
City manager, did you want to jump in?
Your worship, first of all, I think it's important for our public to understand that we already do this. Anytime we do a major street renovation, we do consider all of the aspects of the rebuilding of the street, including landscaping, livability, accessibility, pedestrianization, etc., within our processes. What this motion will do is just ensure that we continue to do that and do it better as we move forward. There would be no intent at all to piecemeal out a reconstruction of a street. We actually do the design work to not only, if it's an underground system, sewer or water, we would do that, but as part of the design, we would also do the streetscaping. And we would offer up a tender package that various construction companies would bid on for the full package. To break it down would simply be more expensive in the long run. So what will happen with this motion is when we come to council with a tender package that says we believe that this company should do this street, they will have bid on the entire design, and we will, within the tender reports from now on, highlight what it is within that design that addresses livability, accessibility, etc. And we will make the point of doing that within the tender staff reports themselves, something that we do not do right now. They are included in the plans, but we do not highlight it within the tender reports, and this motion would certainly cause us to do so.
Okay, I just want a clear understanding how it's going to work. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor McKenzie, and then I see you, Councillor Hickey and Councillor Reardon. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Worship. I was just looking at your motion here, and it talks about traffic calming. And one of the things that I've learned through experience is that expectations of the public and the professionals don't match up. So maybe what we could do going forward through this motion is when we have a street that requires traffic calming, that the neighbors are engaged to show them what is in store for them, and maybe, take into consideration their ideas and feelings on it. Because I lived that situation at Cedar Point where, we were successful in upgrading the road and successful in getting the traffic calming in, but it wasn't exactly what people were expecting, and I think that we need to do better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just further to this, I think it's a great motion. I think it's a great step forward in our efforts to make our city more livable and pedestrian friendly. I guess I would just ask, curiously, on those tenders, how much consideration, if at all, have we given to any kind of social impact, like a social procurement policy or anything like that, unrelated to this motion, and perhaps it's a question for another time, but I'm just curious if it's anything we give consideration when considering those companies for tendering.
Maybe I'll send it to the city manager, but I know, interestingly, we have circled councillor in our strategic planning process as a member of that group, this premise of social equity. And we still have to do a lot more work there on that. But city manager, it's a bit unrelated, but perhaps could you just make a comment?
Well, in terms of awarding tenders, we follow to the letter the Procurement Act of the Province of New Brunswick in terms of what can and cannot be done, what is and is not permissible in terms of the procurement process, either for tender or for RFP. Social considerations have to fall into our larger planning efforts. For example, Plan SJ, Central Neighborhood Plan, the social charter that we're going to roll into the strategic plan. This is where the social considerations would be the underpinning of what we want to do and what sort of city we want to be living in as we move forward. Once we've done that determination, then that can be rolled into the capital plans from there on in. I'm not sure, Councillor, if that answers your question or not.
No, it's fine, City Manager. I appreciate the answer. I guess more what I meant by social procurement policy is more so the social impact that those companies that we're hiring have, right? Are they paying a living wage? Do they care about the environment? Are they taking measures to support the community? I'll take the rest of my questions offline, but I guess I would just say to the public, it's something that I would intend to bring a motion forward on at some point, but I'll take the rest of the questions offline.
Right now, the Procurement Act does not permit you to consider most of those examples of what you suggested in terms of the selection of the company that that would be awarded the contract.
Okay.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. The spirit of the idea is great. I've answered the question too as well a couple times, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Reardon, I believe you had a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Road diets is big for me. I mean, we talk about congestion, which, as I love to remind St. John's, this isn't the 401. You don't really have a lot of traffic here. But then as soon as we get a little bit of complaints about congestion, we want to put like 6 lanes of traffic in to alleviate it. And those things are so divisive. We look at Main Street North and how it divides the north end from the peninsula. I don't want that to be repeated. So I, you know, as we go forward, we really need to really think about the strategy and of livability and the car. And we are all paying the same taxes, the walkers and the people driving vehicles. But the vehicles are giving us a lot more problems than walkers are. So we need to balance this somehow. Anyways, I just want to be cognizant of livability. And I know that's what this is driving for. And road diet is another way to help that out. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. City Manager, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Your Worship, if I may, that's a great segue and a perfect opportunity to make another plug for the public consultation that has just begun today on Move SJ. It is over the next few weeks. The details are on our website, and by all means, those sorts of thoughts about what kind of Move SJ plan we want in the future are very important to the discussion, and certainly we invite that public input into the process. Again, details on the website. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think I got everybody. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Thank you. Anybody contrary minded? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, everybody. That's carried. Next item.
Yes, Your Worship. The next item is 12.1.1. My apology. I just misplaced my agenda. 12.1, which is a staff report containing 3 separate governance-related documents. So it is a 3-part report, which will be presented by the first report being presented by the fire chief, and that would be 12.1.1. This report is with respect to the Public Safety Committee that's being proposed.
Okay, I think the City Manager was just going to introduce it first, perhaps, and then over to the Chief. Yep.
Yes, Your Worship, members of Council, we will deal with each of these 3 governance issues in turn. The first one is the Public Safety Committee. Council will recall that 2 years ago, there was a motion approved by Council for the staff to explore the notion of a Public Safety Committee. I regret the delay. The delay is explainable because our efforts were on the development and execution of the sustainability plan. And then, of course, there are other issues at play, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. We're there now. We have before you this evening our suggestion on the Public Safety Committee and what it could look like. And with that, it's my pleasure to hand over to our Fire Chief, Chief Kevin Clifford, who has also been assigned as the staff lead for the Public Safety Committee. Chief Clifford, over to you.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Common Council. As requested by resolution of Common Council, before you this evening is a recommendation to approve the creation of a Public Safety Committee for the City of St. John. The mandate of the committee to provide a comprehensive and sustainable public safety approach that ensures a significant and continuous commitment to safety by the City of St. John for those who visit, work, play, and live in our community charts a path to more holistic, coordinated approach to our community's safety at large. With an understanding that the safety lens is not exclusive to emergency services, the Public Safety Committee purpose is to maintain comprehensive situational awareness of the safety position of all services it provides to the citizens of St. John, and more importantly, what it is the city is doing to establish, maintain, and improve the safety component of all the services it provides to our community. In the process of developing a comprehensive and sustainable public safety committee approach, we looked at a number of other municipalities. We looked at the CSA standards. We took note of our own experience in adopting a continuous improvement ideology. And ultimately, it's proposed that the City of St. John adopt the Plan, Do, Check, Act process as presented in CSA 1600 and the continuous improvement Lean Six Sigma methodology as the Public Safety Committee's foundation. The Public Safety Committee work will start with the identification of those services being provided by the City of St. John that should be subject to the safety analysis process. Each of the identified services will be examined using the Plan, Do, Check, Act continual improvement model. The model introduces a process for planning, implementation, evaluation, and improvement for each of the services are examined through a safety lens. Staff will conduct the analysis before the Public Safety Committee meetings and provide the Public Safety Committee a report and recommendation for considerations of the assessed service. The Public Safety Committee will act on recommendations as provide additional direction or recommendation as they determine from the staff report. The Public Safety Committee will meet 4 times a year and consist of 5 members of council and supported by applicable staff representatives. Each of the services subject to a safety analysis will be presented to council on an annual basis. The Public Safety Committee provides the forum and discipline to ensure the City of St. John sustains a comprehensive and sustainable public safety approach for all the services that are provided to those who work, visit, play, and live in our community. With that, Your Worship, I'll be pleased to take any questions you may have, you or council may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief. Questions, Councillor Reardon, kick us off, thanks. And I see you, Councillor Merrithew. Councillor Reardon.
I have a quick question. It's going to have 5 voting members, which are all councillors. But what about, like, all of our other committees have 5 councillors plus the mayor, 6? Why would this one not have? Because the way the other ones are set up, there's a councillor from each ward plus an at-large plus the mayor.
City Manager,
Yeah, Your Worship. This is step 1 towards another recommendation, Councillor, that we'll be bringing forward. Basically, going from 2 committees of council to 3 committees of council increases the time demand on councillors. Therefore, we're going to trim everywhere, and we are coming back to council with a recommendation that both finance and growth also be reduced to 5. And it's just, quite frankly, to simplify workloads and to simplify scheduling of these various committees. So they'll all end up at 5 if all of our recommendations are supported by council in the coming weeks.
Okay, I have another question for the chief. The after action reviews, so that takes place if there's been an incident. And so my question about that is, does everyone do an after action review? The Public Safety Committee does an after action review. Whoever was involved in the incident does an after action review. You want to do that for lessons learned. How do you get a unbiased after action review, I guess, done by either parties? So I guess that's my question.
Through you, Your Worship, to the councillor, it's the intention underneath the check phase of the Plan, Do, Check, Act is to do the after action review. And what we'll do is the first meeting of the Public Safety Committee is set for June. Is we would bring in a criteria that would be created in advance to determine what incidents, what processes should have an after action review. And so there'll be a consistent process whereby the after action review will be triggered, and there'll be a consistent process which will apply.
Okay, because I think it's important too to make sure that the after action review, like if I end up doing something myself and I say, okay, I need to look at that, but then I evaluate myself, then I might give myself a better evaluation than if you gave me the evaluation. So I guess that's really where I'm going with this. But at the end of the day, you'll come back with those recommendations to the team. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Merrithew.
Thank you, Your Worship. Gentlemen, so the I'm just wondering how this will mesh with, you've got 911 and police in the mix here. I just wonder how it meshes when they have a commission already, and how this committee meshes with the commission already in place.
So, Your Worship, I'll take that one. We need to understand or remember that this committee is not any different than Growth or Finance Committee, in that in our committee structure, neither Growth nor Finance are the authority or decision-making body. That is to say that whatever is discussed and what staff recommend at Growth or Finance then goes to Council for approval as the approving authority. It will be the exact same thing for this Public Safety Committee. They will not be the decision-making body. Staff will do the work, provide recommendations to the Public Safety Committee. The Public Safety Committee will then forward this to the authoritative body. For a lot of it, that will be Council, and then Council will give due consideration and vote. For some unique situations, and you referred to them, on the police or on the 911 side, the authoritative body may be the Police Commission, in which case the recommendation from the Public Safety Committee would go to the Police Commission for vote, as opposed to going to Council for vote. There may in fact be a situation where we'd have to go to both for vote if it is something that touches not only the police jurisdictions, but other jurisdictions under a council's purview. So the authoritative bodies remain the same. The recommendations will be rooted accordingly.
So, City Manager, that would include things like finance. Would financial decisions go to the Finance Committee and then Council, or would it go to Finance Committee and then the Commission?
So if there are issues being discussed that have a significant financial nexus to them, then of course they would have to go through Finance Committee as well for discussion and deliberation before they went to Council. So we will not usurp any of Growth or Finance's responsibilities with the creation of this. So for example, very hypothetical, Public Safety says that we need to do A, B, and C in the city because we are fundamentally unsafe, or we want to improve our safety. A, B, and C are going to cost a significant amount of money. That recommendation must go to the Finance Committee for review in terms of budgets and capital budgets before it would then go forward to Council.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Worship. Chief, I think that it's very thorough, and I know that there's probably going to be some tweaking done here, but what I would like to see is a representative from Ambulance New Brunswick sit on the Safety Committee. I know that it's not a city service, but I think it's very crucial to the safety of the citizen. And I certainly would like to see somebody from our vulnerable community, either the Council for Community Homelessness or HDC, for example, some group representative that are dealing with people who are very vulnerable in the community as well. Other than that, I think it's great. So something like in the future when we get that fire service review, that would go to this committee first and then go on to Council. Is that the idea?
Councillor, I would see the fire service review going to Council, only because it was a resolution of Council. It may, and again, this is in its infancy, so we may want to step back and have a look at it. But right now, I see the fire service review going to Council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norton.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks to Councillor McKenzie for his comments. I know that this is obviously in its infancy and it's starting to grow and mature, and I guess it's in its incubation stage, if I'm right there, Chief, as it relates to how this committee will form itself, and I'm sure it will go through some of its own growing pains. You know, one of the things that councils sometimes have had a problem with is staying in their lane. And I don't see Ambulance New Brunswick as a part of this at all. I don't see any other agency that doesn't fall underneath a municipal purview being part of this committee whatsoever. That's been a symptom of municipal councils and this council before, when all of a sudden we get into scope creep and we are not part of a lane that we should be driving in. We have a responsibility underneath the Local Governance Act to really provide policing. At the end of the day, we don't have to do anything else. You know, we have to provide policing, and we have to provide a right size police force and fire service and EMO and those sorts of things, and that the committee needs to be responsible for that, and make recommendations, and be I guess a filter towards as it relates to council. And the city manager's already said it. I do hope that it duplicates some of the same features that growth and finance have had, but to get into somebody else's lane is not something that this councillor will support, nor do I want to see. And I appreciate that this is kind of a first kick at the can, and the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle of continuous improvement certainly provides a process for looking at things, much like many other sectors would use a similar cyclical sort of, I guess, microscope to make sure that they're on the right track. So, Chief, thanks for your work in this. I know you're certainly the guy to lead it, and thank you. I've got some more questions, but before that one goes too far, I did feel like I needed to make a statement on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. City Manager, I've got, are you okay to wait, or did you need to jump in?
Well, it is directly to Councillor Norton and Councillor Mackenzie's point. Just very quickly, the committee, just so that everybody who's listening in understands, the committee is the 5 members of council. They are the voting body. Nobody else is the voting body on this committee. It's very similar to growth and finance. I would suggest that people not get too concerned about the staff composition. What we've tried to show in the document is what we think the regular recurring staff composition will be, but not unlike what we do right now, where if growth is dealing with a very specific issue, for example, affordable housing, they'll bring in a whole bunch of affordable housing people into a specific growth committee to have that discussion. Even though we do not have the lead at provincial level on affordable housing. We will most definitely take that same sort of approach to some issues that may come in front of the Public Safety Committee. If we need other representation, then we will go out and invite it. But what we tried to show in the report was what we believe the core staff participation will be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Merrithew, did you, or sorry, Chief Clifford, you had your hand. Did you want to respond?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'd like to just add something to Councillor Norton's question. I think, again, I think very, very intuitive, and the first meeting of the committee will help set what the scope is. So we don't intend to bring a whole lot of the services together, maybe one or two. I certainly want to introduce the new municipal emergency response plan, which we believe will be ready for June. But I do want to take some time at the very first meeting to talk about the composition and talk about scope, and let, again, to the city manager's point, those decisions belong to council. And so those decisions belong to the committee, and obviously the resolutions they recommend back to council. So again, the first part of the meeting is very much part of the planning piece, understanding where the scope is, and we'll get a better sense of the framework of the committee once we have that first meeting.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Yep, thank you, Councillor Merrithew.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I just wanted to back Councillor Norton up. This is not only the voting body, but the body, period, is a committee of council, and I won't support it any other way. You want to bring people in to give information and so on to the committee, fine, but this has to be a committee of council only. I agree that it just creeps forward if there's anything else but that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, did I miss anybody? I have a couple of comments, but did I miss anybody? Okay, thank you. Yeah, so thanks very much, Chief, for the report. When I look at it, I know you've used just as a sample only Public Safety Committee framework things like, not sure I know the MERP, emergency, what's the acronym for MERP?
Municipal, Your Worship, it's Municipal Emergency Response Plan.
Yeah, so a pandemic response plan, safe, clean drinking water, St. John Fire Technical Rescue, St. John EMO, road safety, winter management plan, community policing, rail safety, all these things. Wonderful, absolutely. I guess I'm just sort of registering a comment that I perhaps, and maybe I'm one of the only, I had a complete mismatch of expectations of what the Public Safety Committee was going to be. I was thinking about, and perhaps, and maybe it's directed to the city manager, and they're going to be dealt with through other committees. So I am fully supportive, Chief, of what's been laid out for public safety. We should have all of those things in place. We should have our T's crossed, I's dotted. The binders should be updated, and I've never had an ounce of doubt in especially your leadership, Chief, or anyone's, but your leadership when it comes to emergency preparedness. I guess for me, the gap, and perhaps again this complete mismatch, is when I look at $54,563,000 in public safety, police and fire related costs, and I looked at the protective service costs were high. In my view, they're still high, especially from a per capita perspective. It was under that lens, communication and strategy around public communications, governance challenges, sharing of information openly and transparently with the public, making data-driven decisions, financial sustainability, core service versus non-core. Like that's, I guess, what I thought we were going to tackle. I'm wrong, or perhaps it's going to be tackled in a different way. So I'm not supportive of the Public Safety Committee the way it's laid out. I just believe that in our conversations all the way along, we were somehow going to take these $54 million very important services, and we were going to put a lot of horsepower around them to work on a range of issues. So I guess I'm just registering my comments. But city manager, I expected this, and we're getting this very important committee. I'm just not sure how those other items are going to be tackled.
Yeah, Your Worship, you're not wrong. And perhaps we have, in the report, overemphasized the other stuff. My point is that public safety is much more than just fire and police. Public safety is all of those other aspects as well. It's even much more than just fire, police, and EMO. It's also how winter storm management, and the list goes on and on and on. And perhaps we emphasize, because we wanted to emphasize that, perhaps we emphasized it a bit too much. To be sure, the Public Safety Committee and the voting members of the committee, if they wish to explore matters within police, fire, and EMO, absolutely, the committee will do so. It's not exclusionary to that at all. It's just, it can't be just that. Public safety is much broader than just police, fire, and EMO.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks very much. Anybody else? Okay, perfect. So we have a recommendation on the floor. Do we have a mover of the recommendation? Thank you. Councillor Reardon. Do I have a second? Or Councillor Sullivan? Thank you. Okay, on the question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary-minded? That is a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. Thanks for all the work, Chief. Okay, next item.
Yes, Your Worship. Now we're at 12.1.2, which is a report regarding selection of deputy mayor. And I believe the city manager wanted to introduce this one as well.
Okay, thank you, City Manager.
Your Worship, this work stems from a motion of council for us to explore how we, the tradition that we use for hiring our, hiring is not the right word, sorry, for selecting our deputy mayor. So we have taken it away. We have done some analysis. We've certainly done some benchmarking in comparison to other municipalities. And we have come back with a description of 3 options that seem to be relatively common and a recommendation. As city manager, I must be clear at the outset. The city staff does not have a strong view on this one way or the other. The Local Governance Act does make it clear that the council is to appoint a deputy mayor and that they are to do it in accordance with a governance bylaw. So we do need to do this work, but how the deputy mayor gets selected really is a question for council members to choose. The staff, again, have no strong viewpoint one way or the other. We did put forward a staff recommendation based on our comparative value of the 3 different options, but again, it could have easily gone any other way. All that to say, I think this is a decision for council. I would, however, before the discussion begins, wish to hand over to the city clerk, who will quickly explain the analysis that he did do, the 3 options, and the recommendation. City clerk, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So I'll just give a very quick overview of the report. So as council is aware, in New Brunswick, the election of a deputy mayor is governed by the Local Governance Act and a council's procedural bylaw. The LGA requires the council in the local government to elect the deputy mayor, as the city manager mentioned, and to have a provision within its procedural bylaw with respect to the deputy mayor. But there's no further requirements in terms of legislation on how the deputy mayor is actually selected. So council's procedural bylaw simply states that at its first meeting, council will elect a councillor to act as deputy mayor for the term of office of council, so for the 4 years. And although the bylaw is silent on how the selection process functions, council has a long-standing practice or tradition of appointing the deputy mayor from the councillor who received the highest number of votes in the municipal election. So prior to 2007, the selection process meant that all 10 councillors who ran in the election had an equal chance at the outset to become deputy mayor. But as council will recall, in 2007, there was a plebiscite where St. John changed its election system to a hybrid councillor at large, ward councillor election system. And that meant that now only the 2 at-large councillors would receive enough votes to become deputy mayor. Past councils have discussed this matter, but the tradition has continued to be followed. And just an important point that although the council has continued to follow this selection process for the deputy mayor tradition since the plebiscite, a new council could choose to discontinue this practice at any time without changing its existing procedural bylaw. And so therefore, as the city manager mentioned, it is important that regardless of which selection process council chooses, that this should be codified within council's procedural bylaw. This will help ensure clarity, consistency, and predictability in the process of selecting the deputy mayor. So attached to our report, you will see some research, and the research does illustrate that municipalities across this country use a very wide variety of approaches in how they select their deputy mayor. We have attached a review that we've done to this report for your consideration. The main point is it's very difficult to identify a clear best practice from this process, or to even make apples to apples comparisons with cities and other provinces. And this is due to the differences in legislative frameworks that are found throughout the country. So in short, the deputy mayor selection process is governed by provincial legislation, municipal bylaws, tradition, and protocol. And so what do the 3 cities in New Brunswick do? Well, we just explained our process, but Moncton follows somewhat similar. Their governance system is similar. They have a councillor at-large / ward system. And what they do is at their first meeting, Moncton Council nominates one of the 10 councillors as deputy mayor. Council then elects the deputy mayor for 1-year term using a show of hands or by stating their choice in open session. The process is repeated annually. Fredericton has a ward councillor system. The deputy mayor is nominated by the mayor, and subsequently they're elected for a 2-year term by council through a show of hands in open session. And again, that's repeated in 2 years. So staff has provided you with 3 options to consider. Option 1 is our existing process, so it would simply be to codify what we currently do into our bylaw, that being the council receiving the most votes in the municipal election would become deputy mayor. And so with our present system, that would only entitle the 2 at-large councillor positions to be considered for deputy mayor. Option 2, the mayor nominates from the councillors who express an interest in the deputy mayor. So what would happen is during the first meeting of council, and this is actually how Fredericton does it, their mayor does make this recommendation. So the first meeting of council following the election, councillors interested in serving as deputy mayor would declare their interest. At the very next meeting of council, the mayor would nominate a councillor for deputy mayor, and it would require a vote of council to officially elect the deputy mayor, which they do by show of hands. Option 3 is that council nominates and elects the deputy mayor. This is the recommendation that staff have put forward, and this would mean that during the first meeting of council following the election, councillors interested in serving as deputy mayor would declare their interest. At the second meeting following the election, the council would nominate and elect a deputy mayor through a show of hands. And I would just add that this is the one difference in New Brunswick. A lot of other places that have deputy mayors elected, they do so through like a secret ballot, but New Brunswick's legislation does not allow that. So all votes must be done in open session by show of hands. So that is just one kind of unique aspect. So that's our report in a nutshell, Your Worship, and I'm happy to take any questions from council members.
Okay, thank you very much, Common Clerk. Questions, comments, council? Nobody wants to, okay, Councillor Reardon, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if we looked at very highly successful boards, not just municipalities, because I believe that this is the way that I think it would be done, that a successful board of successful companies, that they would select their own chairman and vice chairman, etc. So I think this kind of aligns with that. So that option that was recommended, one of the options that was recommended, so I think that's a good one. So I don't know if we only looked at municipalities and how they've done it historically, or if we looked at, like I said, there would be boards of directors that would also do it this way by electing their chairman or vice chairman. So that's the option that I think out of all these that I prefer. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that would be fairly common in my experience, is that the whole board would elect its officers, right? Yeah,
right, exactly.
Okay, everybody's got their hand up pretty much, so I'm just going to go with the hands on the screen as I see them. Councillor Strobridge.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I do like the idea of anyone being offered the opportunity to serve as deputy mayor if they want to. I mean, as an example, councillor at large, someone, well, we'll say the new council administration that's coming in, councillor at large could be someone, you know, who has zero experience versus an old timer like me who's got 9 years experience. And so I think it's fair that anyone who may want to serve as the deputy mayor be allowed to put their name forward, and council can decide, you know, who they would like to have. And I also like the idea of not necessarily locking somebody into it for 4 years. I like the idea of the 1 year terms, or maybe a 2 year term or something, so that everybody can have an opportunity to do it if they want. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe that wouldn't be the best way. Maybe somebody should have it for 4 years and leave it be. But I think that it, and I've never been deputy mayor, so maybe you know, there's stuff about it that I don't know or appreciate of the position. But looking, you know, going with the staff options, I think I could probably pick option number 3, at least council nominates and elects the deputy mayor based on those councillors who raise their hand and say they'd be interested in it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I don't think 6 people should be choosing the deputy mayor. I also don't think 6 people should be making the decision on how St. John chooses the deputy mayor. For obvious reasons, everybody around the table here, except for Councillor Merrithew and the current mayor, have a bias in this decision. So I'll throw that elephant in the room out. But I agree that it needs to be codified and should be put in a bylaw. I guess the 2 councils I've been involved with under the ward system, both had interesting discussions before the first meeting of council with regards to the deputy mayor. And in my mind, I asked the question in 2008 of then city solicitor when the last time was that St. John had selected a deputy mayor that wasn't the councillor with the most votes. And in his recollection, and he had the oldest corporate memory, never was the answer. With the option that's recommended, I guess what I see is 2 weeks of scrambling after the election, a meeting, and then 2 more weeks of phone calls and scrambling in order to garner votes. And at the end of the day, 6 people choose who the deputy mayor is for 4 years. I had to look at the data from the last 3 ward elections, and if I might just show you the spreadsheet real quick. This is from Elections New Brunswick, and the member at large in 2008 got more votes than the mayor. In 2016 got more votes than the mayor, and in 2006, if you look at the mayor's votes and the then deputy mayor's votes compared to the rest of the councillors who were elected in the wards, I guess my comment would be, if you look at what's the job of the deputy mayor, well, part of it is if the mayor, for whatever reason, stops being mayor for a period of time, that person is the mayor of the city of St. John. And the mayor of the city of St. John is selected at large and with the most number of votes and a mandate from the most number of citizens and residents in the city. So I would have a difficult time, I guess, saying that, the deputy mayor, the at-large candidate got 11,000 votes, but our deputy mayor got 1,600 from 1/4 of the city. I certainly accept the discussion with regards to how do boards do it, but the council, Bangor does, but this council doesn't choose its mayor, right? We don't all get elected and then decide around the council who the mayor is going to be. This is a democratic process. There are votes of thousands and thousands of St. John citizens involved. So, at this point in time, for us to change how it has been done for as long as anybody can remember in the city of St. John, based on one meeting and a discussion of several biased people, I don't think does justice to the discussion, to the tradition of the city of St. John and how it's been done, and really to basic democratic principles. I guess I'll leave it there for now.
So thank you, Councillor. Are you, I'm just trying to understand, first of all, thanks for whipping the quick spreadsheet. You would codify the current practice, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I would select, I think it's option 1, codifying the current practice.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. When you think about it, I mean, I was for the ward system. I am a ward councillor and I like the ward system. But that doesn't take anybody out of this council that could be deputy mayor. What's the qualifications for being a deputy mayor? Because I got the most votes? No, it's just the mathematics that makes you have the most votes. So I like the thing that council votes around the table. What I don't like is the show of hands. Because when you get into show of hands, there's animosity no matter what you want to say. Animosity would come up, well, he didn't vote for me in that. So to avoid that, have a secret ballot or whatever. But I mean, people, that's just my opinion, okay? But
So
I mean,
you can't do that, Councillor, just so you know, you can't, the legislation, no, it has to be an open vote.
Okay, well, there'll be animosity then, I guess. So if that's the way, I mean, it's a catch-22 for me. I like the people that ran for at large had to spend a lot of money. It cost a lot more money and a lot more labor and intense people running around to run at large in the city of St. John than it does for a ward councillor. They put a lot of effort into it. But I think, as Gary said, the democratic system is 10 people around the council vote for their deputy mayor. That's my 2 cents. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to agree. I've given this quite a bit of thought, and I have to agree with I think what Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Strobridge have said. I like the idea of the transition between the position. I like that it keeps the position new and it keeps it fresh. And I think that's reflective of both what the citizens of St. John want in electing 10 representatives around a council table and around this table. And I think it seems to work well in other cities as well. And it's nice to have something ratified. So I would be partial to option 3.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm not crazy about the idea of starting a council off with a lot of animosity. I don't think that's a good way to get started and splitting people up. I think we need to start off building a team, not tearing one down. So I guess from my perspective, I think that, we can either stay with the person that gets the most votes. And, I mean, that person doesn't necessarily have to be deputy mayor. I mean, if you don't have the time to put into it and you can't do a good job, then you shouldn't be putting your name forward for it. But I guess at the end of the day, I don't want to see a council start off with a lot of animosity and stuff. So I would just say, I'd probably just stick with the way it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Oh, thank you, Worship.
Here we go.
Well, anyway, I have the privilege, or I've had the privilege of being deputy mayor twice. When I first started on the council, and I guess when I'm leaving council. And I think the deputy mayor has to have something that the citizens have allowed that person to have that the other members of council don't have. And I've had the privilege of having the highest number of votes. And there's something to be said for that. And besides that, I run a campaign that's the same as the mayor's. You have to run for the entire city. And when you run for a councillor at large, which is what you do, because you don't know if you're going to get the highest number of votes, it costs you a heck of a lot more money, takes you a lot more energy and a lot more hard work than a ward councillor, because a ward is one portion of our city. So, and you got to look at it this way. The citizens vote you in. If they want you to be the deputy mayor, they will vote for you, and they'll make sure, or hopefully they're going to try to make sure you get the highest number of votes. I just don't like the idea. I understand that ward councillors would like to be the deputy mayor. I get that. And when I first put this forward last fall, I did so because I wanted the city to have a policy. So that was my number one goal, was to have the city have something in writing. Because both times that I became the deputy mayor, there was a little backroom business going on where people would think, well, maybe I go on somebody else that's the deputy mayor. That's very difficult to go through. Didn't think any other member of council should have to go through that. It's not very pleasant. And so I wanted us to have a policy, but I really think that you got to consider the people that are voting you in. You also got to consider the time commitment. Are you able to do that? And fine, if you are, you can become the deputy mayor. I don't think anyone should take the deputy mayor's job if they haven't got the time to do the job. But just to have your name put in and somebody nominates you because you're the most popular person or you're best looking or you speak the best or whatever. I'm certainly not in favor of that, because I don't think I would have ever got to be the deputy mayor if I hadn't had the highest number of votes. Because if I had to change the system and not have the deputy mayor appointed by the highest number of votes, then I say, well, then the mayor should elect whoever the mayor becomes, or whoever becomes the mayor should put in the deputy mayor, but not just a vote of council. I think that's a popularity vote, and I think you're cheating the public. And you're taking away from the position of the deputy mayor. You're making it diminished to what it is today. You know, people think you're deputy mayor. How did you get to be the deputy mayor? You have the highest number of votes. That really says something very loudly to the public. So I'm not accepting option number 3. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Deputy. A couple of comments. You can see this isn't easy, right? Because we're split here now. I will tell you that I did have a couple of conversations when the deputy originally brought this. I don't remember when it was actually. It must have been last fall, yeah. And I did have some conversations, certainly, and I won't be around. So, but certainly I did have some conversations with mayors in other cities. And certainly the mayor every year, or that more frequent switchover, is very divisive. You can imagine, every year, and I know that's sort of not recommended here, I don't think, but that can be very divisive. You've got to vote by a show of hands, and if so certainly that was one comment, that you're going to have a bunch of folks lobbying for this. If you're going to choose somebody, choose them for 4 years, is what they, certainly I think recommended in my conversations. And again, I think both sides have made some argument here. We have a long-standing tradition of having the deputy mayor come from an at-large councillor with the largest number of votes. I think codifying that is certainly a strong option. And then the only other option I think I've heard here is you've got a few other folks that just say everyone puts their name in a hat, and you're going to have a whole bunch of votes. You could go through 2 or 3 rounds of votes before you get anybody with a majority vote. So I don't know what that does to your next council if you have to go through 2 or 3 ballots to get yourself to a deputy mayor versus codifying the traditional approach that we've had over the years. So anyway, open to, there's no recommendation on the floor yet, so open to some next step. Councillor Reardon, sorry, go ahead. And I'll come back to you, Councillor Strobridge. Councillor Reardon.
Can I ask John, from a governance perspective, what is the best procedure?
Which John? John Taylor?
The clerk, John Taylor.
Yep. John Taylor, yep.
So the question is, which is the best procedure from a governance
perspective?
From a governance
perspective.
Be careful.
Yeah, no, I'm not certain I can answer that question with 100% clarity or certainty, because it's done differently in every city. One thing that's kind of unique in our situation is that it's left totally up to the municipality, and as we see, it's not consistent through New Brunswick how it's done. So I don't know that there is a best. I think it depends on which community you're in, what the traditions are, what the overarching legislation is. So there are just so many variables. Interestingly, this is not a position that's on the ballot for the voters to consider. So they can vote for councillors, they can vote for the mayor, but the deputy mayor is not a position that voters vote for. So it does put municipalities in a bit of a difficult situation to create its own process with very little guidance from the province. So it really is entirely up to the municipality, and it's hard to point to a best practice. We've looked, from our research, it appears that these struggles are quite common for many different councils, and trying to determine exactly how you're going to do your selection process is something that many jurisdictions struggle with.
Yeah.
So I hope that provides somewhat of an answer, but.
No, not really, John. Just kidding. It's interesting. I just thought there might have been like best practices out of, when you go to these, or I have been to sessions on governance. I thought maybe there might be some component of it, but you do bring up an interesting point, and I'm certainly not denying that it's a far more work, a lot more work, and a lot more money, I suspect, to run in the whole city versus your own ward. So there is a lot more work, but as we've always done it this way, listen, it doesn't make any difference to me one way or the other, really, but we've always done it this way. I don't think that's a typical line for St. John. We've always done it this way. I've heard that my whole life that I've lived here. I'm not saying that it's the best way or the worst way, but I don't think that's a good reason to continue anything, is that we've always done it this way. But the most interesting point that you make is that I don't know if the public knows that only 2 people have the opportunity to be the deputy mayor, because, as you say, no one votes for the deputy mayor. So that should be clarified as well. So I just find that does make it interesting. So that's my comments on that. How this rolls out, it's not a hill I'm going to die on, that's for sure. But I would like to hear from all the councillors. Has everyone had a chance to speak on that?
We're working down through. I don't think Councillor Norton has, but you can let me know. Councillor Strobridge.
Hi. So this would be my last time to speak on it. I don't really know for sure. I mean, I started out saying, option 3, if let everybody have an opportunity to serve as deputy mayor if they want to. And then I heard Councillor Sullivan say what, his points, and I was like, oh yeah, I never really looked at it like that either. I mean, I'm really on the fence about it. Even the common clerk told us, Fredericton does it one way, and I think he said Moncton does it a different way, and we do it our way. Like Councillor Reardon said, it's not a hill I'm going to die on. If it's not broke, don't fix it. I'm not really sure how to go, so I'm looking forward to see what other councillors have to say. But at this point, I'm really on the fence about it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to you, Councillor Norton, because you haven't spoken yet.
No, thank you, Your Worship. Council colleagues, I'll be supporting the staff recommendation number 3 this evening. Everybody raises valid points. I do, when I look at the deputy mayor position, obviously, sometimes it would be given council's latitude to select somebody that has a skill set that they believe would be that would serve the office of the deputy mayor well. I think is an advantage of that point. It gives you a range of options in terms of who would be a best fit, whether that's experience or whether that's time or whether that's passion or whether that's any number of boxes that you could check in a skills matrix. I think number 3 provides that opportunity. Yeah, I mean, if we're just going by sheer number of votes and you only have a couple of councillors run at large, of course they're going to get they're certainly going to get more votes than a ward councillor. I don't think that certainly boxes out a ward councillor from being any more qualified for the position of deputy mayor. At the same time, I've often heard around this council horseshoe that that councillors are to represent the entire city in their position and their votes. We've often heard that. So I would say that the position of councillor at large is no more responsible for representing the interests of the entire city than any particular ward councillor representing the interests of the entire city beyond their geographical ward. So we do have a responsibility to do that. I think that, it upholds that principle that many have used as an argument in a position to uphold a certain position within a number of debates that we've had over the years. So I'll be supporting staff's recommendation. At the end of the day, completely satisfied if it doesn't go that way either. And St. John carries on its with tradition that I support, and many of the traditions that we have, I support to this day. But in this case, I'll support the position of number 3 that the author has presented in this evening's council pack. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Well, I was going to make a motion because, and then if it's voted down, it's voted down. And my motion would be that the City of St. John has a policy for the selection of the deputy mayor, that the person that runs in the election with the highest number of votes becomes the deputy mayor.
Highest number of votes. Yep. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether it's ward or at large, but just the highest number of votes.
Highest number of votes becomes deputy mayor.
Okay. Clear. Councillor Sullivan is seconding that. Okay, thank you. Did you have anything else, Deputy, or can I keep going down through the speakers?
No, I just want to get a motion on the floor. Yep. If it goes through, well, that's the way I think it should be. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Worship, and certainly appreciate the dialogue. I came in with an opinion, and it's changed a little bit, and I think we can all understand that it's a hill we're not ready to die on, and are willing to have the discussion and continue the dialogue. I guess I would just ask the Common Clerk, how did you arrive at a position? I know it was a tight one, but how did staff arrive at a decision and a recommendation to deviate from that tradition with a bit more clarity, if you can?
The clerk went home.
No, the city manager may want to field this one. It was in discussions with the city manager. I'm not sure if he'd like to.
Again, I will stress that we do not have a strong view one way or the other. The reason why we recommended, again, not strongly, but we recommended the approach whereby council choose its own deputy managers. First of all, we did agree with the initial motion that says we have to codify this. Even the Local Governance Act tells us that we must codify this. So that has to happen. The question is, what are we codifying? The reason we went with our recommendation was based on a couple of factors. First of all, we do believe that certain ward councillors would have skill sets that perhaps would be ideal as deputy mayor. Those skill sets may not necessarily reside within the councillors at large, because again, on the ballot, nobody runs for deputy mayor. Everybody runs to be a councillor, either at large or in a ward. So we did consider that by simply opening it up to select any council member, perhaps you could tap into another skill set that you would want in the deputy mayor. Part of our recommendation is that it be for the 4 years to avoid going through this more than once, but also we do believe there's some stability required in deputy mayor. Deputy mayor is a position where skills are developed, including how to run the council meetings, et cetera, and changing on a more frequent basis would cause additional work. So our recommendation was do it for the 4 years and do it whereby council could choose someone that had the skill sets that they wanted as deputy mayor, as opposed to just relying on the popular vote. But again, we could have easily gone with any of the other recommendations, and the staff will simply put together the bylaw that this council directs without hesitation.
Thank you, City Manager. And I guess I would just say, I think I'll remain resolute in my option to support the third and staff recommendation, just for the reason that I would see it as more democratic. I don't think voters are going to oppose with the decision of electing a deputy mayor as their councillor at large, but I think that there's more votes speaking when 10 members of council make a decision than there are with voting at the highest number of who receives votes. So that's going to be my decision, and appreciate the dialogue.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I would say when people want to get elected, it doesn't matter if you're a ward or at large, you're not thinking about being deputy mayor. I would suspect not anyway. So if you want to be deputy mayor, you can run if you're a ward or at large. But when the people run at large, I like I said, I don't think deputy mayor is in their mind for running. I think anybody running and on this council wants to get elected first, and anything after that would be second. That would be my estimate, my guesstimate. So obviously I'm going to support option number 3, as the staff has recommended. And again, as David just said, it's probably the most democratic way. Because you know what? I said it when I first got elected and was sworn in that night. My heart is in the west side, but my mind and decisions have to be for the greater St. John area as a councillor. But you're never going to take my heart out of the west side. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sullivan, you'll wrap us up, and then I've got a couple of comments myself. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess a couple of the comments that came previous talked about most democratic way was 10 councillors. Remember, the most democratic in this case is 6 councillors, not 10. And that would be in the latest election of 2016. If we had done it that way, it would have been 6 councillors, 6 to 10 councillors versus 7,000 citizens voting. I disagree that many of our residents are very educated and understand the traditions in St. John and how people have become deputy mayor in the past. And I'm certainly not advocating for it because it's always been done. But by the same token, change for change's sake isn't good logic to make changes either. And I guess the last point I would say, Councillor Norton makes a very good point about our responsibilities as councillors. You know, I've been a ward councillor, I've been a councillor at large, and I can tell you the conversations are very different in the 2 different roles. I certainly have more conversations now about city policies broadly and priorities of streets and snow clearing versus, you know, ABC Street isn't getting cleared. And put in perspective, if you're a ward councillor and have aspirations of being deputy mayor, you are deputy mayor for the whole city. And how does it work with your integrity if you're a deputy mayor for the whole city, having that elevated position among council, and yet spend the majority of your time advocating, as many people do in their wards, for particular projects in their wards, for their ward in particular, for development in their ward? I would have concerns if the deputy mayor, as deputy mayor of St. John, was spending significant time, and you know, this is tough because, you know, it's one of those contentious things among us all, folks. But if the deputy mayor has consistent messaging about supporting their own particular ward, that isn't something a deputy mayor for the city of St. John can do. And that's something that somebody who's at large can do. I guess I'll end there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So again, just for clarity, Deputy, the motion is that the City of St. John policy be that the councillor with the highest number of votes become the deputy mayor. It wasn't the councillor at large. I mean, by virtue, probably a councillor at large, but it could be a ward councillor. Did I get that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so just to close it off here, folks, I think we should have a clean set of standards that are as well understood in advance as possible. So I think that's one guiding principle. You know, to your comments, Councillor Reardon, about, I just think we should have clarity. I think it could be potentially very problematic that we go into this new policy and you are in a brouhaha as a council going through multiple votes to try to get to a deputy mayor. I think it could be very problematic. So first off, I think it should be a clean set of standards that people understand in advance. I think, you know, I think this is illustrative of and why it's so sporadic across various cities. I would argue it's the same reason why council didn't touch its pay for 14 years. Or, you know, council and Quispam are looking to raise their pay to $23,000 and the editorial board is writing they shouldn't touch their pay. It's wrong. It's divisive. It's anything to do with us and council is like off limits. I think if you're going to go to a selection process like option 3, you somehow have to come up with this clear set of standards and an approach, objective criteria to try to make your selection, or you're going to rip yourselves apart. And I don't want it to be divisive for council. You know, some of the other mayors have told me it gets very divisive. There's politicking behind the scenes. Vote for me, vote for me. You know, hey David, if you give me a vote, you know, that will rip council apart. So I would, and again, I rarely get to vote. We'll see here in a minute. I think I would lean towards a clear set of standards. Let the people decide. Let the people decide. Whoever gets the most votes, they've voted, they've decided, and that lets the people decide who your deputy mayor is. So I'll stop there as well. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. The motion is that the policy be embedded, that the council member who runs and receives the largest number of votes becomes the deputy mayor of the city. That's the motion that's on the floor. That's been moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan, and I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, so we have sorry, just hold your hands for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4. Am I seeing that right? Strobridge, Deputy Mayor Gary Sullivan, and Councillor McKenzie. Okay, thank you. And those contrary minded? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, thank you. So the motion is defeated. Okay, thank you. Councillor Hickey.
I would just like to put a motion on the floor, Your Worship, to accept the staff recommendation on it.
And number 3, thank you. Moved by Councillor Norton. Moved by Councillor Hickey, seconded by Councillor Norton. Sorry. Okay, thank you. So we'll see if anybody moves their mind here. Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, thank you. And those contrary minded? Okay, thank you. Councillors Strobridge, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan. Okay, okay, well, that motion is carried then. Okay, thank you. Next item.
Yes, Your Worship. Next item is 12.1.3. This is an initiative with respect to the singing of the national anthem at council meetings. An initiative supported, recommended by the city manager. This can be found in other jurisdictions, and basically, as council's aware, it was tradition in most city councils throughout the country to do an opening prayer for many years. And with a decision that came down from the Supreme Court in 2015, councils stopped doing this practice. Many of them replaced the practice with various things, such as a moment of silence. Pretty common in Ontario for national anthem programs to be in place. And so, as you can see in the report, we've examined some practices done in Oshawa and other jurisdictions in Ontario. And the recommendation is that council create a similar program which could showcase the local talent of youth in the community to come into council meetings and sing the national anthem. And so there is a recommendation in the report, and staff's happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, do we have a mover of the recommendation? Councillor Reardon, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hickey. Thank you. Question, Councillor Hickey?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to briefly mention within this, I'm supportive of it. I'll tell you, I will not be the first person to register to sing O Canada at a council meeting, but I would wonder if I could propose a friendly amendment to the motion to include a land acknowledgement in it, whether it's a recognition of the unceded territory of the Maliseet. I'm not sure on the specifics. I would hope that someone more in tune than I would be acknowledged on the specifics, but I think with this motion it would be appropriate to include something like that as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Reardon. Sorry, go ahead.
I wouldn't add that right now, only because I would like to have a bit more information about that. before we voted on it. I don't want to vote on that on the fly.
Okay. I did speak to the city manager because I saw some feedback online, and I think it's important feedback. City manager, can I put you on the spot just to maybe address that second component for a moment, please?
Absolutely, Your Worship. You're not putting me on the spot. We do need to address how we can properly recognize First Nations within our government process. And before the municipal election with this council, we will be coming back with a recommendation on how to appropriately recognize First Nations, whether it's some sort of verbal acknowledgement at the end, some sort of visual acknowledgement or something else, but we will be coming back to you with a recommendation before the end of this term. I personally would like to keep the two things separate because they are different initiatives and we are doing them for very different reasons.
I'm comfortable with that. City manager, do you think it's appropriate to include that in the text of the motion? That there will be some indication of that representation at some point?
I really don't think, again, I think we're confusing two different initiatives by doing so. It is a commitment we have to you, Councillor, to come back in this term with our recommendations on what to do in terms of appropriately recognizing First Nations within our council proceedings.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. I appreciate the commitment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have the motion on the floor. Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Okay, perfect. Thank you. The motion is carried. Next item.
Your Worship, next item is a general correspondence item, 15.1 on your agenda, and it's from the St. John Community Arts Board with respect to 2021 funding. Recommendation is to direct Commissioner of Finance to issue checks.
Okay, thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Thank you. Just a question. I guess I know Councillor Hickey, I think you're on. Will there be any kind of, I guess, no, we can't do anything in person these days, but I just was curious. Normally we would do a ceremony of some kind, but probably can't do that. So anyway, Councillor, were you looking to speak on this item or was your hand up? No? Okay, thank you. Anyone? Okay, the recommendation's on the floor. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Thank you. Anybody contrary minded? Thank you. The motion's carried. Next item.
Next item is 15.2. It's a letter with a request to remove Heritage Conservation Area designation at 191 Princess Street. Recommendation to refer to City Manager.
Okay, Deputy Mayor is moving that. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor McKenzie. On the referral, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Thank you. The motion's carried. Next item.
Next item is 15.3. It's a letter from the town of Grand Bay Westfield with respect to Parks and Recreation Master Plan exercise. And recommendation is for council expression of support to Grand Bay Westfield.
Moved by the deputy. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. And yeah, so thanks. I received the paper version today at my desk and certainly want to thank the town of Grand Bay Westfield for including us in those consultations. And we need to continue to do more of that work together. So that's wonderful. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Anybody contrary minded? Motion's carried. Thank you. Next item.
And last piece of correspondence is 15.4 on your agenda. It's a letter from a citizen with respect to essential service. Recommendation is to receive for information.
Okay, moved by the deputy. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hickey. Thank you. On the question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Anybody contrary minded? Thank you. Motion's carried. Next item.
And the final item, Your Worship, is a resolution that came from Committee of the Whole with respect to a lease in the city market for Kim's Korean.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor is moving that and seconded by Councillor Merrithew. Thank you. And on the question, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. And anybody contrary minded? Okay, thank you. That's it. Well,
That's the
thank you
final
very,
item.
thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Stay safe, follow the COVID protocols. I know spring is in the air. Wear your mask, wash your hands, all the sanitizers, all that good stuff. And thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night. Take care.
Right.